Awai, Amotai he kawenga, Amotai he whiwhinga, Amotai he rawinga. He wake e ke noa ki te rangi, he moana e ke noa ki te whenua. Nau mai rā te hau, nau mai rā te kohi ngā whetū, nau mai rā ngā Amotai. Haumi e hui e, tai ki e.
Kia.
Kia ora mai tātou. Tuatahi, ka nui te mihi kia koutou kua tai mai i te whakarongo i te tēnei kaupapa whakahirihira. Nei rā te mihi mai oha no i tō wā i te haramai ki i te hāpai i te tautoko ana tēnei kaupapa Supplier Scoop i te rā nei. Rawe ki te kitia, rawe ki te whakarongo i a tātou i tēnei rā. Ko wai au e kōrero ana, ko Pō tuku kino taku inga, huri hau no te tai rāwhiti, te matawa Māui, Waikato me Hauraki, ko au te Supplier Manager, Supplier Program Manager o Amotai. Nei rā te mihi kia tātou. Kia ora everybody, welcome to our Supplier Scoop for May, the second installment of our Supplier Scoop series, kicking off strong with Matt and the boys from Ground Pro earlier this year, and now coming into a totally different sector, but a really capable business with KIWA Digital and Steve Renata. Steve is a renowned educator, but also digital creative in this space. I first kind of came into contact with Steve's mahi when I was working, in the commercial sector, and had a couple of clients in that sector that were government clients. And I saw, as I was doing a lot of cultural capability assessments and audits and things like that, Steve's handiwork with their cultural language and capability apps. And I always kept seeing, whenever I opened up, Defences or Ministry of Educations or NPI's cultural learning app, it would always come up with KIWA Digital. And so it's a huge privilege to have Steve share with us his journey, one as a business and entrepreneur, but also his journey with Amotai and how that's helped him to navigate where he's taking his business today and into the future. So, nei rā te mihi anō, kia koe e te rangatira, Steve, tēnā koe mō tō wā i tohoto ana tō mātauranga, tō kōrero, tō pūrākau hoki, kia tātou katoa. So, I guess e te whānau, a bit of workshop etiquette, webinar etiquette. We would love to hear from you. And so as you listen to Steve's kōrero today, he's got about a 25 to 30 minute presentation to take you on the journey that he's been through with Amotai and with KIWA Digital and where it's going. We encourage you to utilize the chat to chuck in a question, even if you just need to earmark it for later on. If it's a really kind of pertinent question that I think would be really good to have a quick wānanga throughout the presentation, then I've prepped Steve to say, hey, mate, I might interject to say, hey, there's a good question here on the kōrero that we're having. So please feel free to utilize the kōrero, the chat function, to drop in any things that are coming into your mind as Steve has a presentation with us today. So without any further ado, I will hand the rākau over to Steve to introduce himself and take us through his kōrero, and look forward to the next 20 to 30 minutes and learning more about KIWA Digital in this space. Kei a koe e te rangatira.
Mauri ora kia koutou. Tēnā koe Pō, ka mihi hau. Tēnā rau tu ki a koe, ina rangatira, ina hoe whā, tēnā koutou katoa, ko wai au, ko imimi te maunga, ko manga eti te awa, ko whangaroa te moana, ko mā tātou te waka, no nāpui hau, ko Ngāti Pakahi me Ngāti Riehia o ku hapū. I whānau mai au I Kawakawa, Bay of Islands, I tipu aki au I Milton o tākou tonga, kei Tāmaki Makaurau e noho ana. Nō reira, tēnā koutou katoa. Kia ora everybody, it's an absolute honour and privilege to be here with fellow Amotai members. Thank you, Paul, for the introduction. And hoping over the next sort of 30 minutes can share a few insights and some positive things that have been happening as a result of being connected to Amotai. I think I actually also have my founder on the call. I saw Rhonda's name pop up there, so tēnei te mihi atu, kia koe Rhonda. And so I'll give you a little bit of an overview of what we've been doing at KIWA, including the sort of the history and kind of where we are right now. And like anybody that's founded their own business or created their business, it's a real journey that we've been on. And with any journey, there's ups and downs, and the downs usually help you learn how to get it back up. And so part of the story is around the resilience. So I've got a couple of slides here just to keep it interesting. So if you don't mind, Paul, I'll share the screen and get that happening.
And don't forget the little sound function as well, brother. Looking forward to that. Yep.
Yeah, let's just check that that's there. Hopefully we've got that full screen going on. Have you got full screen there, Paul?
Okay.
Okay. All right, so just jumping straight into those that are on their lunch break right now and going, okay, I'm new to Amotai. How do I get the most out of being a member? 3 simple steps, takeaways. One is as a business owner, be easy to find. So make your profile, procurement ready. Second step, be really easy to trust. So use that network actively, not passively. And then the third step is be easy to buy from. And whatever your kaupapa is, whether you're heavily Māori centric or not, turn that into a value proposition that's easy for people to understand and translate. And so all of this is just making you visible, authentic, and easy to do business with. So what does that actually look like? Well, for KIWA, and me being a representative of the KIWA organisation, the first thing is had to get this profile or capability statement is a term that we use a lot more. And so you can go away and create your own, and some of you have already probably done that. I'm going to show you how I actually created our one. Next one is that Amotai are great. They run lots of different events all around the motu with quite targeted audiences, and you get to see who the buyers might be and so forth. And so what we did was we chose a couple of different events, one in Whanganui-Atara and one in Tamaki Makaurau. We looked at the buyer list, which in our case tended to be more government agencies and some local authorities and the odd corporate, and got really focused on what their needs might be. Attended those events. In terms of the kaupapa for KIWA, ours was around how you develop really culturally grounded technology that helps the organisations in protecting and sharing and growing the value of their stories. And for the particular groups that we were looking at, the basic problem they were trying to solve was improving or increasing their cultural capability, starting with Te Ao Māori. So as a result of those 3 steps, having a capability statement, which I'll show you an example in a second, going along to the events, really focused on who it is I was trying to have a corridor with at those events and what they actually need, and then be able to present the kaupapa in a simple way. And when I say a simple way, because you're part of an event where there are many other vendors, sellers, businesses, you've probably got a window of maybe 3 to 5 minutes where you can rock up, do the introductions, and then start to understand what they need, and obviously you share your insights. So you've got to have your choreography down. You've got to be on point. You've got to have the right sort of energy. You've got to make yourself obviously relevant and authentic, but definitely somebody that people want to have keep the conversation started and keep that going. As a result of those 2 events, we ended up with 4 contracts, MOE, Defence Force, Fulton Hogan, and the Upper Hutt City Council. And they've been great contract partners that have continued, from back, this happened like 4 or 5 years ago. So all I can say is follow the steps. It's really worth it, and you'll start hitting some big goals. That first part, the capability statement, I was able to create ours in about 10 minutes using a bit of AI to support, giving it the right prompts. Went back through the document and made sure that it had the not only the brand values, but the tone that we use at KIWA Digital, relevant to the tech sector, and including the cultural impacts that we created, and beautifully packaged up PDF, so I can have a hard copy of that. I can send it off to folks, and that just gave me that confidence that we were presenting ourselves in a really professional way on paper. So for those that have to leave right now because you're just doing lunch break, that's the biggest takeaways. Use the events, get yourself professional. Use the right tools to zero in on your clients that you're looking for, and it'll all match up in a really efficient and culturally authentic way. So backing this up a bit, sort of 20, 25 years plus, the things that KIWA's been focusing on over the years have been three things. Kaupapa, and that sort of story, language, cultural place. The capability, and that's sort of being at the intersection of creativity, culture, software, and more recently, sovereignty. And then what's the principle that we always apply, which is he tangata, he kōrero, the people in the story. So the technology for us is all about the amplification of the people, the languages, and the cultures, not the replacement of them. Real people with real jobs. So the lion's share of the company are based here in Tamaki Makaurau. We have our offices down in Wynyard Quarter, for those of you that are familiar with downtown Auckland, near the water. With COVID, though, it did different change a few things for us, where we've got to understand how remote working could actually work quite well for us. And so a number of the staff work in other locations apart from Tamaki Makaurau, and we have a lot of contractor staff and partners that actually live overseas. And we've kind of worked out a model where we can do a lot of work externally through, using Zoom and Teams and so forth that make the business work, and also help with the contracting services. So we found that through COVID, there were a lot of people out there that were highly skilled, that wanted jobs, and we're happy to work remotely. Now, whether that remote means from their home or from a remote location, 50, 6 one, half dozen another, and it all really worked well. So what that's enabled us to do is have a fairly small team, relatively. We sort of usually float somewhere around 10 to 12 full-time staff, and then we're able to use that contractor model in a way that really works for us, but also really works for our contractors. Three things that we've been sort of focusing on solving. One is story. What is the story, particularly from an Indigenous perspective? And how do we reach wider audiences without losing the authenticity? Number two, when we get into the workflow, which is getting a little bit more techie, how do you make things like really complex localization faster, more accurate, and more scalable? And then more recently, working with Indigenous communities, hapu, iwi, and so forth here in Aotearoa, how do we help the communities protect and govern and activate their cultural knowledge in this incredible age we live in? Quick snapshot of the company, formed back in 2003 from our beautiful founder, Rhonda Kite. And where it kicked off was that Rhonda was looking at the problem of localization of media. So how do you localize media? So let's just say children's cartoons, for example, from the US, and bringing those in and dubbing them in something like Te Reo Māori. What is that process? What's required? Historically, the dubbing process, those of you may be more familiar with things like subtitling, but the dubbing process was very complex, very manual, potential for a lot of inaccuracies and so forth, and ultimately quite expensive. So Rhonda went through the process of doing all the manuals and thought this has got to be a better way to do this, and then came up with the idea of VoiceQ, which was our first technology platform, which accelerates that whole dubbing process, right from ingestion of the script, translation of the script, adaptation of the script to make sure it fits the lip movements and so forth, and then of course right through to the final production. So that kicked off the company. And then moving forward, sort of more towards 2010, actually 2007, 2009, the iPad arrived on the market. And so suddenly there was a second opportunity that Rhonda identified. With VoiceQ, she identified the idea of syncing footage and sound. With the iPad, the opportunity was to sync text and sound. And so, again, thinking through the process of how you create resources with audio, Rhonda was able to come up with a second platform called CutPro, which essentially created some of New Zealand's very first ebooks. Some of you may be old enough to remember Harry McCleary from Donaldson's Dairy and The Wonky Donkey, which are New Zealand or Australasian favourites as far as kids' books go. So KIWA was able to take those original books and apply audio to them and present them in an iPad format. So we'd now moved from localizing television and film, moving now into publication of children's books and so forth. So we continued with that, and we found that the children's publishing sector was pretty tough to work in that sector. The big publishers want blood for their work, and it was just getting quite difficult. The margins were tight, and so we sort of spotted another opportunity through adults, and that was we could see here in Aotearoa, let's roll the clock back sort of around that 2010, 2015, that the government were looking to increase Te Ao Māori capability with the public sector staff. So they needed some resources and tools because not everybody could get to a wānanga to do te reo Māori or perhaps do a noho marae. And so we took the Cut Pro technology, which had been applied to children's books, and applied that to adults who were trying to make that first little step into Te Ao Māori with some really basic reo as it applies to the workplace and some very basic tikanga as it applies to the workplace. And our first client actually was Air New Zealand. And I remember the story, Andrew Baker, who had been with Air New Zealand at the time for about 28 years, said, "Hey, bro, I need some help to train the staff." And I said, "Oh, yeah, what do you need?" He said, "I'd love everybody to be able to say kia ora when the passengers are coming into that first service contact. When they're leaving, if they could say mā te wā, which essentially means until next time. And if we really step it up, we could get them to say, no mai hara mai, ki tāmaki makaurau, welcome to Auckland." So that just those three simple phrases was the gist of his problem he was trying to solve. And so anyway, we went away and applied the technology and created the very first app for Air New Zealand to help their staff with that service engagement touch point. And of course, there was a lot of other content in the app, but that was the three things. Kia ora, mā te wā, no mai hara mai, insert destination. And for those of you that have travelled over the years with Air New Zealand, you'll notice that really lifted a lot, particularly with the international cabin crews. And so we saw the power of attaching audio to something so simple as, text for greetings and the impact that could have. Rolling the clock forward to 2025, 2026, we found that through that 20 years working in the media space and then working in the cultural space, that a lot of our clients would like to build their own tools. But in doing that, they wanted to make sure that their assets were secure and were able to deal with things like data sovereignty and so forth. And so we developed Culture Q really as a result of the two previous platforms, which still operate, but also 20 years being in those different spaces. So it's been a journey. It's still going, and it's very exciting. For those of you that are wondering about dubbing me, what does that look like? You may have seen or witnessed some of these shows. So Squid Game is the world's most ever watched television series. It's a Korean series that was dubbed and subtitled into like 28 languages. The English dub was done with our software VoiceQ. We're really proud also of a lot of the Indigenous dubbing recently. So the Disney classics into Te Reo Māori, Shrek. And then there's been a variety of different games for those that are more in the gaming world, all of which have used VoiceQ to do that process. So super proud to be doing stuff out on that global market stage, but also here at home. For those of you who've never seen dubbing, here's a little snapshot of the lead actor, voice actor out of Squid Game, just to give you a sense of how they actually do it.
Just a dimwit who lives off his mother, but you're with me in this place. Isn't that interesting?
This is the voice that many people heard when watching Netflix's most popular series ever, the South Korean drama Squid Game.
I'm just dying!
And English wasn't the only dubbed language available.
One code matter. Si tu refais une erreur, la carte sera bloquée.
There were 12 others.
Selecione quantia que gostaria.
Dubbing is one of the hardest forms of voice work that there is.
This voice work has been key to making the South Korean show a global phenomenon. The series was also subtitled in 31 languages, but Netflix says more people watched Squid Game dubbed. And overall, dubbing consumption on the platform has more than doubled from last year, with help from some big hits.
In the past, people would say, oh, you can't really dub into English. The American audience or the English audience, they don't like to hear dubbing. Well, look at us now. Squid Game is an amazing example.
So yeah, little snapshot of that. So from VoiceQ and dubbing back to digital storytelling, where we had using Cut Pro. And so this enabled us to make the very first form of ebooks, which we then took to a more immersive experience, and to be able to be experienced through smartphones, smart pads, and of course laptops and PCs. Here's a little snapshot of how that technology actually works.
In 2004, we invented an improved method of synchronizing sounds with a recorded track or video using computer apparatus. This was patented in 2007. This enables text and audio to be synced at the level of individual sounds, mimicking the way we first learn language. We provide a suite of analytics and cultural survey tools to measure outcomes effectively. This is complemented by insight reports to review and explore user experience, scalability, and innovation.
And so from voice cue with media localization through to Cut Pro developing ebooks and then immersive apps, which are heavily audio centric, finally to culture cue. So as I mentioned, it was the result of the previous 20, 25 years of work in the cultural space and also the media localization space. But there were three things that really popped up over the last 2 years. One was fragmented knowledge. And a good example is that for a lot of Indigenous groups, and this may be your own whānau hapu iwi situation, information's all over the place. It's under Uncle Steve's bed. It's on a certain computer. Someone's got a USB key. There's a few files in SharePoint over there in Google Drive, whatever. Some of it's all hard copy, good old-fashioned paper, stacked in boxes somewhere that potentially might have a fire risk. Who knows? So that was the problem that started to come up, and what we were hearing is, oh man, we've got all this stuff, but it's all over the place. How do we bring it all together in one space in some sort of secure format? The second one was around the governance of, if you've digitized this material, how do you maintain authority over it, access rules? What's the provenance? That means the source. If I do a report on this particular stuff, can I guarantee that the references in there are actually legitimate? And then are we able to sort of maintain the cultural context of everything we're doing? The last one, which is really coming like a freight train, is AI, raising the stakes, both in opportunity but also in risk. So how can AI help communities, Indigenous communities, explore new knowledge? But then how do we mitigate the risks if the control and the consents are unclear? So these were the three things that were presented to us, and we sort of felt we were at the intersection of it all. So here's a little snapshot of a partial step of our solution called Culture Q, and this was the actual global launch of Culture Q last year in Las Vegas at the AWS Global Conference. There's about 5,000 people in this room, and there's actually 40,000 people at the conference. We were one of two companies from New Zealand that were asked to present on stage via video. The other companies were from other countries, and all of us that were presented on stage were part of social entrepreneurship, or essentially companies doing good for humanity. So here's a little snapshot of what took place there.
They descend from the Ngāpuhi tribe and also the Ngāti Paki Ngāti Rehia sub-tribes. The mission here is to help bridge cultural divides, help Indigenous groups preserve their knowledge, and amplify the Indigenous voice using technology. Culture Q, it's an AI-powered platform that's designed to help Indigenous groups collect, preserve, and share their cultural data and narratives. Through the AWS Partner Network, we're able to leverage CustomD's expertise in generative AI.
So Culture Q and Caitlin talk to each other. Caitlin is an ethical and private AI system. We like to call it a kaitiaki, a guardian. That only looks at the knowledge base these communities are building themselves.
At the heart of this is data sovereignty. Many Indigenous groups require local residency to uphold the law, the customs, and control. The local AWS regions reduce our risk, grow confidence, and most importantly, allow us to gain the trust.
Knowledge is power. Holding your own knowledge and being able to empower your people with it, being able to tell the stories the way that you want to.
What we're doing now, looking at the future with AI and Culture Q, we're continuing that way. We're continuing that navigation into the future. It's building a great foundation for all the kids. It's enabling them to have all these tools and have all of our knowledge in one place so that they can be empowered to make really bold decisions in the future.
So with that journey of Culture Q, you've seen a part of the vision that's not completely finished yet. But there were some key things that we really wanted to focus on is how do we ensure that cultural knowledge requires the authority and the permissions and the provenance? It's not just about storage. How do we address the access, which could be different for different users, kaumātua, whānau, learners, and so on, right through to the public. For organisations engaging with Indigenous communities, how do we help them to be better in acting responsibly and securely? And then last but not least, how do we have a platform that provides that governed environment for the protection and the discovery and the learning and the publication? So you're moving all the way from kind of storage, which you could say is a kind of a preservation focus, and then you're moving at some point into a revitalisation focus, which means you're now going to publish resources for learning and all that great stuff. So it's an end-to-end sort of life workflow, if you like, that you've got to think about addressing, and what role technology could or should play in any aspect of that. So we went, okay, let's figure out protect, then look at the organisation side of it, then the exploration of what's there, and then the activation, which is how resources get out. And I guess for this call, because this is quite a detailed piece of work, I just want to simplify it for those of you that are perhaps embarking on your own technology platform journey and or without AI. So the first one is deciding how you could store your assets. In this case, we're talking about cultural assets. And the conversation that we're often having, people talk about data, typically when you're in a tech sort of environment. From a cultural perspective, we prefer the term taonga, because data for us usually is not just a clinical Steve Renata, born 1966, September 25th, lives at Lupeti Rise, phone number ABCFG. It has whakapapa connected to it in many, many cases. And so that whakapapa connection to very simple personal details, and there can be more than whakapapa, starts to change the nature of it all. And so when we're thinking about the store, where does that information come from, and where it could be stored, there are lots of different questions to be asked. And that I would say is the very starting point of governance. And governance doesn't mean you have to be a director on a trustee board or whatever. Governance starts with the whānau and getting them first and foremost to understand what all these technical terms actually mean, and what are we trying to achieve here. And so if I think about my own marae group up in Whangaroa, we've got lots of taonga digital assets. Some of it's Waitangi tribunal stuff, some of it's karakia and waiata, some of it's about tikanga, some of it's the minutes of the trustee meetings right back to 1920. And to me, lots and lots of stuff. And so where is all that, those assets? How much of it is in a digital format? And do we want it stored in something that's on the ground in a server type environment, or do we want to have it stored in the cloud, or a bit of both? And there's no wrong answer. It's just deciding, what's going to work for you and give you the most confidence that you're doing the right thing. Once you go through that first process of trying to understand all that, what you actually want, and let's just assume you've now digitized all the files. Let's think of simple stuff like you've got hard copy documents. You've managed to digitize it in a useful way that it can be used. The step that a lot of people miss is that once you've digitized a file, let's just say it's a photo, and you put it into a digital format, you need to look at if it's got metadata attached to it. So those who are on the call that are not techie, metadata really is things like the title, what you might call keywords, we call tags, and then a short introduction explaining what that file represents. So if I use the example of a waiata, it would be, purianei, some tags that relate to waiata, cultural performance, and you can have many others. And then it might be just a little description on who was the person that wrote that. What is the traditional, typical use that this waiata could be used in some context? That's the metadata. So the waiata is one thing, in te reo and possibly in English as well. And then this is in the text form, and then you've got the metadata. If you've got the metadata, this really transforms the quality of your taonga. The next part you've got is, all right, we've gone through those 2 steps. We've got good quality taonga data that has metadata attached to it. Now I'd like to explore it, to go and find stuff and search it. And so at that point, you've got lots of different, what we call productivity tools, which could be just having a nice folder set up and you just click through the subfolders and off you go. It might be done in alphabetical order. Or then you start to move into some type of automation / AI that can also help you with that search functionality. At that point, probably what's going to come up is, hang on, we've sort of solved our data sovereignty with the first 2 steps. We're feeling good about that. Does AI compromise our data sovereignty? And the answer is, it depends. So for those that are very focused on the data sovereignty, the answer for the AI for you is to have private AI or ethical kaitiaki AI, which is what we chose, and which essentially means the AI tools we use do not scrape the internet in any shape or form. They only look at the taonga, the data that we give it access to within the culture queue ecosystem. And you can put all sorts of other limits on it. You can put personalities and stuff on it, so you can really humanize. You can have tikanga inside this type of AI. For those that are not worried about that so much and just really want the power of something like Claude or ChatGPT, you can have that plugging in. You've got to know that the moment you do that, you lose a lot of your data sovereignty. And then finally, you get into the fun part. You are producing your own resources. You're creating reports for whatever the need might be. You can create marketing materials, collateral, learning modules, and the list goes on and on and on. Again, you may have AI to help you do some of that stuff, or you just use your current productivity tools. There's no right or wrong. But those 4 steps all kind of tie together. And I guess one of the things I'd like everyone to understand from this call is that the technology does what you tell it to do. And so when we get into discussions around things like data sovereignty and permissions and stuff like that, they come from the governance kōrero. That is the humans making decisions about access, permissions, authority, and so forth, and document that. And then that is what you decide to feed into the technology, which will then do what it's told to do. What I hear is a lot of people sort of jumping straight into the tools and pointing out, oh, this tool's created this problem and do that. I would challenge it and say the problem has probably been the way you set the tool up to start with. You haven't given it the instructions or customized its ability to do what you actually wanted it to do. And so for all of you out there, whānau, before you plug in your tools or set up your ecosystems, make sure you've had the kōrero for each of these 4 stages, and you will end up in a much happier place a lot quicker. Jumping through, we've got Culture Q. It's been out there for about a year and a half. We've got a diverse group of people here. So we've got Whale Pacifica and Whangarei, Maloa Lele, everybody up there in Whangarei. They look after about 90 Pacifica businesses in the community. We've got University of Waikato. They've sort of developed Culture Q and almost a Māori LinkedIn, if you like. Dylan Dua, which is University of Melbourne, they're using Culture Q to allow Indigenous entrepreneurs from around their global network to send in a video or an audio file or perhaps a short Canva presentation explaining who the person is as an Indigenous entrepreneur, what their quick story was, and what's been some of their insights. Te Tauratanga Te Charitable Press have a lot of video content of leaders that they want to have in a secure place and then be able to draw insights from quickly. Innovate HQ, working down in Ōtepoti, they're doing a lot of youth training work, and so they're using Culture Q as a platform to help with their resourcing and reporting. The Ngālia Foundation was our very first client out of the Western Australia group. Like 7 people in the world speak Ngālia, and so they're using Culture Q for mapping, which helps them with their native title issues, which helps them to have more leverage over the mining companies in the area. Ngāi Tūtiaru, up in the Hokianga area there, they're using Culture Q to coordinate the efforts around their Y claim. We also got the Tongan Medical Dictionary, which is very unique to the Tongan dialect, medical terms that we've never seen before from the English dictionaries. And then our largest client actually is Cherokee Nation in the USA, and the primary use case for them is we built their digital dictionary, and the assets are stored and hosted within Culture Q. So a lot of different folks, a lot of different countries with a lot of different use cases. This slide here is just reinforcing those different use cases. And then these are different people that we're talking to around the country right now, perhaps looking at using Culture Q for their own reasons. Same thing in Australia, again, really diverse groups. And then into the USA, the civilized tribes of Oklahoma, and yes, folks, that is the real term it's called. They're the neighboring tribes of the Cherokee Nation. And then in the Pacific Northwest, there's a big, large group that I was speaking to just 2 weeks ago. So that's kind of the story, the history of the KIWA side of it. Coming back to you as Amotai members, it's like, so what? 3 things. 1, what is your competitive advantage? We believe that your cultural insights can reveal unmet needs that mainstream providers often miss. So whatever you've got in terms of cultural know-how and insight, it might be a practice, it might be knowledge of a certain thing, it might be the way that you do design, it might be the way that you express your narrative. It goes on and on and on. That's the gold. And sometimes we possibly take that for granted because we just think, well, that's what everybody does, right? No, not everybody does it like that. So think about what your cultural asset really is and make that a competitive advantage. Then when we get into the market creation, so now we're in an event and there's a lot of other people selling their services and products and insights and so forth. Sometimes we get limited because we say, well, we fit in a certain category. One of the opportunities is to say, well, let's create a new category or a version of the current category so that we're now not competing directly. We've shifted a little bit sideways. We've gone a bit north or south and just creating a little bit of a niche for a period of time to be able to present ourselves in a way that doesn't make us look like we're just another tech company. And then the last one is around the procurement, is getting a real strong read on what the buyers are looking for. And some of that's done kānohi ki kānohi, talking to different staff from particularly government agencies to find out what their problems are. Again, I would tend to default on getting AI to help me to find out what is the strategy of the agency, what are the deliverables they have, what are some of the political, economic, social constraints that they're dealing with. And so that when you roll up to understand their problem and solve it, you've just got so much more richness to your insights that, pre-AI, this could take you weeks to find out. You can find this stuff out in like 5 minutes flat, and it'll give you a lot more confidence in your quarterly. So the 5 lessons from being with Amotai on our journey: start with the problem you understand really deeply. What is the problem that your clients, your prospects are trying to solve? And whenever you express that, push a bit harder and see, could we actually go a little bit deeper on that problem? Sometimes the problem statement is not the actual problem, it's part of the problem, and you can go a bit further down. And going down, I call it the 3 levels down from the problem that you started with, is where it's the te kākano of the seed. That's the real piece that can, it's the foundation of what's really going to give you that value proposition. Whatever capability you've got, can you scale it? Is it repeatable, or is it very much focused on 1 or 2 key individuals in your organization, particularly if you're small, that kind of hold all the IP and the knowledge and the best practice? That's not scalable. So scale it out, document things. Trust is commercial infrastructure these days. Trust levels around the world, particularly with AI, are really low. So what is it that you're offering that creates trust straight away, whether that's verbally, in your printed materials, your web online presence, video stuff you put out, you might be doing thought leadership on LinkedIn. If I come in contact with any of your your material resources, or you, do I get the sense of trust very quickly? And if not, why not? Number 4, probably obvious for some, using your partners to identify and protect your own value and proposition. You know, ask your suppliers and vendors, you know, what they think is your value proposition and the positioning. And sometimes they might just come in it with just a slightly different angle that you haven't thought about. You think, oh, wow, actually, I never thought about doing it like that. Because, you know, we all get quite fixated from an internal perspective of what we think we are and the value we add. Test that out. Just ask. It's amazing. I mean, I ask my daughter sometimes how good KIWA technology is for language and culture and stuff, and the answers come back pretty fast. And it's the Gen Z response, which is sometimes quite humbling. And then last but not least, just aligning your purpose with the market need and ensuring, you know, can buyers actually fund that? And where it's useful, use the AI to support your processes. So final wrap before Q&A. I really believe, and the team at KIWA really believe, culture is not a constraint on innovation. It's the reason innovation matters. And we believe it's really been a source of competitive advantage that's kept our company afloat all these years and on trajectory to a pretty interesting growth. So, ngā mihi ki a koutou, ka mutu mō tēnei wā, and back to you, Paul. Kia ora.
Tēnā koe anō e te rangatira. Ai, i tō mātauranga, e whāriki ana kia mātau. Rawe ki te rongo i tēnei kōrero, i tēnei mātauranga, i tō tōna kia tātou. Thank you, Stephen. Just reflecting on your kōrero, brother, and it's such an amazing feat that you've been part of since 2003 into 2025. And, you know, just the growth and the expansion, the relevance that you've been able to kind of grow through over those 2 decades. And I find it quite refreshing. I know with we've gotten this quite recently. You know, Amotai exists mainly for construction, and we had, you know, our Ground Pro boys on in our first Supplier scoop. There's some great case studies and opportunities that they had just maximized on, but it's so good to see, you know, some of the opportunities that you've been able to carve and create from your experience with Amotai, and also identifying the needs and being able to turn those needs into tangible solutions. And I think there's such a wide array of you know, clients or customers, and, you know, some of them, you know, might be our suppliers, some of them definitely our iwi and whānau, our government buyers and our local councils, our corporates as well. Even, you know, like I mentioned at the beginning of the call, coming into those language learning apps, you know, amazing opportunity. And now what you've created, the culture queue, to kind of, you know, have that depository of all the data, all the whakaaro, the tikanga, the history, the pūrākau, and then to be able to, you know, educate our rangatahi, educate, you know, other tribal whānau, iwi whānau, to have access to. And I think this is one of the hugest things that I see in this sector, in our tech sector, in our AI sector, is, like you said, just in those closing remarks, what needed 10 days or 2 weeks to produce from us, you know, like I remember, you know, going to libraries and looking at encyclopedia. I remember my year 9 living Manu Kōrero, it was like speech competition down in Tolaga Bay, and I spoke about a flipping barracuda, and I got all of my information out of an encyclopedia, you know, and that's what I had to use. And now, you know, with everything that we have, we can access that through these digital tools. So yeah, huge mihi to you again for that. We do have a couple of questions come through, brother, and so I'd love to just chuck these out. One from our manukura, Anna Jane. Pātai, what keeps you grounded and motivated as a business owner in this space?
Oh, kia ora, Anna Jane. Look, I'm a boy from Milton. You know, I grew up in a little wee town, beautiful Pākehā mum, Ngāpui dad. We were, you know, pretty poor. And so anybody that's lived in regional Aotearoa, the first thing you learn is you got to stay humble from the get-go, because they will cut your freaking legs off straight away. And things a good trait, to be fair. You know, to keep your head down. People won't ever compliment to you; they'll compliment about you. You know, and that's old school, I know, for so much, but it always sort of kept me on the straight and narrow. Of course, you know, we're all striving for success. You want to be a winner. You want to be, you know, doing this and that. But that doesn't mean your head has to inflate. Got to keep this guy in check. You know, ego is this dangerous thing. So check your ego at the door. It's probably a starter, and let people tell you how great you are versus you wanking on about yourself, right? And the person that would always cut me down first was my mum, Nanny Carroll. She was a straight shooter. There's no, she didn't, you know, she don't want to hear you waffling about yourself. And occasionally you get a nice compliment. In terms of motivation, I very much come from a physical side of things. So my previous life was Les Mills International. I was one of the founders, and so we're the largest group fitness company in the world. I was completely rugby mad as a kid. I wanted to be an All Black. Got to New Zealand secondary schools and then got a bit crook. And so sport and fitness has always been part of my life, which has been part of my energy. And so when I came to KIWA, one of the difficult things with being in tech is that you're usually sitting down like down out and looking at a screen. You're not moving. And I really struggled with that, you know, going from exercising a couple of hours a day, every day, to sitting for, you know, 6 hours or more. And so I actually had to double down on my fitness regime. You know, when I joined KIWA, I was 45 years of age. I'm 60 this year. And so I figured out, okay, if I am sitting and I'm going to, you know, get a standing desk, I'm up and down, but I'm in an industry where we are a lot more docile than other industries like construction. Geez, you're out in the job, you know, trading, go bro, up and down ladders, freaking swinging your arms. I'm jealous of you that are in construction if you're out there in the field. So for those of you that are more white collar, desk bound, techie on screens, I would say before you touch a keyboard, what are you doing for yourself today in terms of activity? Right. I know I'm jumping topics a little bit here, but if you are in tech managing big projects, lots of people, a lot of stress, whatever, you have to be in tip top high order. You know, so if we've got a scale of 0 to 10, for me, I've got to be at least an 8 every day, because it's impossible to be 10 every day. Why do I need to be at 8? Because every day is going to present some sort of life landmine, hand grenade, whānau situation to go off. I'm feeling a bit off. And when you're coming in less than 8, you're crap at dealing with the situation. Even though you might have best intent, you just don't have the energy. So the most important appointment every day, from my perspective, is with you. Your appointment with yourself. So whatever you need to do when you get out of bed to meditate, calm down, get with one with the earth, the universe, go to the gym and do a workout. Well, I don't care what it is. You must lock that schedule in to yourself. And I know some of the parents out there going, come on, bro, I've got a family. Get up half an hour early. Right? Screw that. Because you can't be the best version of yourself dealing with life if you're running sub 8. It doesn't work. It's a train wreck. So put your whole order, not you, put your whole order first every day. You can have an off day, you can have cheat days. But, you know, 5 out of 7, get that going. And then you got a chance to hit the day and someone throws you the whatever situation, you go, I got it. If not, boom. And number 3, you're knocked out. The other reason you do this is your team are looking at you, not listening. They look at you. When you rock through the door, when you jump on a Zoom, whatever it is, do they instantaneously go, I don't know what this frickin' guy's on, but I want a bit of it. Right? Role model aura. Role model whole order. Don't talk about, do it. So, sorry, a bit of a getting on a bit of a soapbox here, but I've seen so many people that are really successful and wealthy with the most shit health ever. And they're 10 years my junior. I'm going, bro, you got your priority wrong. Go hard, but get your whole order right. And if you're in better whole order, you're better to be around. Your partner, your whānau, blah. And your colleagues at work. So, yeah, sorry, long answer there, Anna Jane, but that's the real deal. It's nothing to do with tech. It's actually the opposite.
Tēnā koe mō tērā. Awesome, brother. Thank you. And yeah, I still get it here and there. But I think Nadine is still on the call. We went for a run when we went down at Wellington, meet the buyer, and it just kind of re-sparked that. And I try to put that on, some socials, and yeah, every time I'm interacting with people now, they're like, "Oh, I saw your thing," and you want to put that out there, but that consistency, yeah, most definitely, you got to make time. And there's some really cool kōrero in the chat, tautoko in that
I
sentiment
often
too,
find
brother.
if I've got to say a business issue that's come up, I don't maybe I'm angry at something, I'm confused or upset about something. If I just scoot off the gym and I've just got 30 minutes, and if I'm in that sort of zone, I might just step up the intensity of the workout. I can get all my negative energy out into the workout so nobody gets hurt. I feel a bit tired. But of course, your endorphins kick from that little bit of increased burst. And so there's like a light bulb moment goes on, like, okay, oh shit, that's what I'm going to do. Don't do that. Be nice to him or her or whatever. And you come back a different person. You're energized. You're clear. You're not sort of fumbling around and bitter and angry and upset, all that sort of negative stuff, which just compounds the problem.
Definitely.
So don't make yourself part of the problem with your energy. Back out of it, and then come at it much more together.
Maybe you and Jarman can go get some tennis coming up. Jarman's in the tech space as well. So, yeah, maybe you guys can connect, and he's just put in the chat there. Hey, Steve, I can see that we're getting close to the end. I just want to ask, really cool kōrero from one of our other suppliers who's in the cultural hosting space. So it'd be really cool to have, and he's actually one of your whanaunga from up north, Ngāti Wai as well. But yeah, so from Ngā Waka, he said here, in what ways can KIWA support or work with small Amotai businesses as well? What does that look like?
Contact me. So, hey, I'm right here. I'm very good at responding on email straight away. If you got any questions, thoughts, just hit me. Stephen@kiwadigital.com. You'll be surprised how fast I come back with a response. But I will just throw this out to the business leaders out there. When I help with support tautoko people, I always challenge them too. Say, okay, kapai, gotcha. I hear this, that. What are you prepared to change to go into that future spot that you deserve? What are you prepared to give up? And if the answer is nothing, then I say, well, our conversation's finished. Because nothing changes if nothing changes. So normally something has to change, and it's usually yourself. You got to go, oh, I've got to change something here, and that feels really uncomfortable. It's Stephen@kiwadigital.com. So get ready for change.
Yeah.
And yeah, you can be anything you want.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, hey, I think Missy's typing something, but just kind of closing off our supplier scoop today. Really appreciate your kōrero today, Steve. Not only just the tech side of things, but also, your whakaaro around being a business leader, being a business owner, your hauora, resonate aura, show aura. And I love that kōrero, and I think we can all take that on board in some way, shape, or form. I love what Culture Q. I think when we first connected, I was like, man, this needs to be made a lot more known in this resource that you've created, brother. And so whatever we can do to kind of continue to socialize Culture Q for our iwi, our businesses might be able. I remember we talked about a CRM component to it as well. We'd love to continue to showcase that as well. But huge mihi to you for coming on and sharing this whakaaro with us. Thank you to everybody else, e te whānau, that has attended today, and really hope that you got some awesome insights. You have Steve's email. Please reach out. Jarman, I hope you reach out. Ngāwaka, I hope you reach out as well to connect with Steve. Similar alignments, or even in your space too, Ngāwaka, how can Steve's platform kind of help you in what you guys are creating with Care CNC? So a huge mihi to you all for giving us of your time today. Please join us next month. We're staying in the tech sector, and we're bringing on one of our AI businesses, River Group. And so, yeah, bring back Steve. I thought I saw him drop off there.
Sorry, I got kicked out there for some reason.
Yeah, not too sure what happened there, brother. All good. We just gave you a glazing accolade of mihi to you while you were offline, just so you know.
This starting comment though for everyone Amotai is, you know, a problem shared is a problem solved. And you know, I'm sure that I can't see everyone on this call, but I'm sure you're all bloody hardworking, independent, and one of the loneliest jobs you can have is being the leader of a company. And sometimes you can feel like you can't take that home. You know, it doesn't taking all your drama back home as a CEO, the leader, whatever it is, it just sort of creates more problems. And so what you ultimately end up doing unintentionally is kind of keeping it all to yourself, thinking, oh, I've got to be the person that freaking carries this thing and solves it, you know? And I'm sure there's a few heads nodding out there. Find somebody or a group that you can have that trusted, safe, hey guys, it's actually going shit for me. It's really not going great. We have a couple, for those of you that we have a little group already running with NZTE. It's a CEO group, Tāne Wahine, and we've got a little, what we call a safe space. You come onto that, have a bit of a corridor about this is what's keeping me awake at night, whether it's personal or whatever, boom, and here's the thing I want to solve. Yeah. And I think when you're in that kind of group, you know, once a month, the up, even though they don't solve anything, they're uplifting the weight off your freaking shoulders to go, whoa, I'm not the only person dealing with this shit, right? And so problems shared, problems solved with a safe group that are really looking out for you, but they're also going to call you out. Yeah. So I don't just want, you know, oh, get on your Steve. No, I want people to go, hey, bro, I think you got to go left and right. Yeah. You can only do that when you're at safe. It's like that sports team situation. So find your person, find your group, particularly if you're on a growth curve, and that'll give you 10 years back of your life.
Beautiful. Beautiful, brother. Again, wonderful. Thank you for those concluding remarks, bro. We'll look forward to continuing supporting and promoting KIWA Digital Culture Q as a part of an Amotai registered business. Thank you for all your contribution to our community and wish you all the best in future endeavours. Kei a koutou, I te whakakapi o tā tātou hui I tēnei wā, I whakakapi I te karakia, no reira a he karakia tātou. Unuhia te uru tapu nui, kia wātea, kia māma, te ngākau, te hinengaro, te wairua, te tinana, te ara tangata. Koia e rongo kia whakairia ki runga kia teina, haumi e hui e, tāiki e. Tēnā koutou te whānau ngā mihi, ka kite.
Ngā mihi, Steve.